Everything you need to know about managing careers in technology and consulting. That's what we're going to cover here in episode 239 of Transformation Ground Control.
Welcome to Transformation Ground Control. Ground Control. The podcast that covers everything related to digital transformation. This podcast features technology agnostic and international discussions related to digital strategy, software selection, implementation, change management, business process optimization, and everything else you need to know to make your digital transformation project successful. Whether you're embarking on an ERP implementation, supply chain transformation, or any other business or digital transformation, this podcast is for you. Now, here's your host, Eric Kimberling.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Ground control to Major Tom.
Hello, welcome to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 239. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent tech-agnostic consulting firm that helps clients with their digital transformation journeys. And this is the tech-agnostic podcast that covers everything related to digital strategy, including people, process, and technology, everything related to digital transformation. That's what we'll cover here in this podcast. Joining me, as always, is our co-host, Darian Chwialkowski. Darian, thanks for being here again today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited for today.
Yeah, different topic, different angle than we usually cover in this podcast. We're going to focus on careers, how to manage a career in technology and digital transformation, but also how to build the right team, how to find the right resources for your IT department and your digital transformation. We have great guests we're going to have on later in the show. His name is Jonathan Whipple. He's been on this podcast before. He's the CEO of a company called Lander Talent, which is a company that he and I actually co-own together that focuses on IT staffing. So we're going to have a conversation with him later talking about how to manage careers in technology. And we're going to look at it from both angles. We'll look at it from the job seeker, the job aspiring type perspective, but we're also going to look at it from the perspective of IT leadership and how to build that right team for your organization. So we'll cover that here later in the show. But before we get to that conversation with Jonathan, we'll start with some social media questions. We'll get into some newsworthy topics, including how the tech hiring landscape is becoming more uneven and how AI-driven layoffs are coming, but not in the way you might think. And then we'll get to those newsworthy topics before we talk to Jonathan. And then later in the show, after Jonathan is on, we'll also talk about my own personal story of 5 lessons I wish I knew before I started my consulting career. So again, a lot of content here that's going to be helpful for you in navigating your own career, but also those of you that are trying to build a team and might be trying to build relationships with consulting partners or potential building out staff for your IT department. This is all going to be relevant for you. So before we jump into our guests and our newsworthy topics, what were some of the social media questions that we've received recently, Darian?
Yeah, a good first question here. It's about Salesforce. It's when Salesforce first pushed CRM into the mainstream, and a lot of people said ERP was dead. Now, 20 years later, we're having that same debate again. Is ERP really dying this time, or is it evolving like it always has?
Yeah, it's probably just evolving like it always has. I mean, there is a school of thought that I subscribe to at times, which is I do think ERP is going to become less relevant over time, but I don't think it'll completely go away. I think ERP, as we know it, is dying. You know, the old monolithic single answer solution that's going to solve one company's entire technology need. I think those days are long gone. However, ERP is probably still the best technology to house, a company's data. If anything, it's a glorified database that just has all the information, all the transactional history, financial history of an organization. Resides in ERP systems in many cases. But I think what's changing is ERP, I don't think will be the center of the universe, or that it won't be the center of the tech universe anymore. I think going forward, especially with AI, you're going to start to see AI become more the center of the universe, especially as it relates to end users, the people that are interacting with the technology. I think they're going to view AI as more the interacting or the sort of the driving technology that they rely on the most. You might still have ERP and Salesforce or CRM and other systems in the background, but I don't think they're going to have that same front-facing role that they've had in the past. And they certainly aren't going to have that one-size-fits-all offering anymore. I think they're still trying to retain their relevancy by, and when I say they, I mean ERP vendors are still trying to remain relevant by investing heavily in AI and putting some pretty cool AI tools in place. But organizations that we work with are easily recognizing that they don't have to replace their entire ERP system to get AI capabilities. They can do it without it. And that's, we have a handful of clients right now that are hiring us to do their AI strategy and their AI deployments. So AI is becoming a bigger part of our business, and ERP is becoming less of our business over time. Over time, I would imagine that trend will continue.
Yeah, absolutely. And the next question today is super interesting as well. It's about Odoo, and it says, if Odoo could make its POS system or its POS module more robust and truly offline first, it would be game changer. Do you think offline first functionality is becoming a must-have for ERP and POS systems, especially in industries where connectivity isn't guaranteed?
Yeah. It's actually a very relevant point for a few of our clients. We have a few clients that are operating in fairly rural areas, international, multinational organizations that don't have reliable connectivity. We also have one that is in the maritime industry. So you have, point of sale transactions happening out in the ocean, and you don't always have reliable internet there either. So, we have clients that have that need for the option to have offline access and capabilities. The problem, though, of course, that this person is alluding to is most technology is moving to the cloud, including Odoo. So I think if Odoo, knowing their market, especially their international market, because they do, if it's a company that just operates in the US, okay, maybe it's less of an issue. But if you're a company that's operating in, multiple rural areas or areas that just don't have reliable infrastructure, then, that cloud first, cloud native sort of approach to IT can be a liability in that regard. So, yeah, I think companies that can provide hybrids, I think, are going to have a pretty good advantage in the future. Although I think the connectivity issue will likely go away over time, as more developing countries and more infrastructures catch up. And as you get more like Starlink satellite type internet connectivity and things like that. So I think over time, maybe this becomes a moot point, but for now, companies that can offer both on-prem and cloud, or at least have the option to access data offline, I think that's going to be, a big advantage for those providers.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point compared to what's going on right now to the future for that situation. And speaking of what's going on right now and looking into the future, we're going to get into a couple different topics in our Newsworthy section today here about the tech hiring landscape, AI, different things like that. So to start, one of these Newsworthy articles was talking about a analysis that was just released of the latest U.S. employment data, and it paints a complicated picture for tech-specific hiring or IT hiring. There's two big takeaways from this article. One was that there is growth in some areas. So U.S. employers added 175,000 tech jobs in August alone, with the strongest gains in IT services, software development, and cloud infrastructure. And those specific parts of tech remain hot growth pockets, but there's declines elsewhere. At the same time that we're seeing those hot pockets, we're also seeing tech hardware and telecom roles with a lot of job losses there, which is continuing this multi-month trend of a decline. Help desk positions and some traditional support roles are also shrinking as automation takes hold of these roles. There's one really interesting point. While overall demand for tech workers remains strong, the geography and sectors hiring them are shifting. So non-tech industries like healthcare, finance, and government are hiring thousands of IT professionals each month, often faster than the big tech firms themselves. The bottom line from this article was that the tech job market is no longer rising evenly across the board. We're seeing kind of a reshaping right now, where legacy roles are contracting, cloud and software is expanding, and non-tech companies increasingly driving demand. Eric, with this, and I know we'll get more into this with Jonathan as well, but in your opinion, What is the best way for IT professionals to stand out in this crowded job market right now that's going through a shift?
Yeah, well, I think the big thing is to, if you can highlight and showcase the fact that you use AI or that you're comfortable with AI, if this is true and you are, then I would certainly highlight that, because I think that companies are looking for ways that, people can they can bring in people that are going to do their jobs well and bring the right tools and have the right knowledge to be effective and efficient. So I think focusing on any AI comfort that you have. And if you don't feel comfortable with AI, I would say, get comfortable with it, because it is going to it'll give you an advantage, especially because it is such a early, we're in the early stages of AI adoption. So if you can prove that you use it in your job, or you know how to use it, then I think that's going to be super powerful and set you, neck and shoulders or head and shoulders above the others that are out there. So that'd be the main thing. And then, I would just say focus on AI. That'd be the big skill. But that is something that I do want to ask Jonathan later too, since he's the professional, career staffing type person.
Yeah, absolutely. And like this article said, employers outside of the tech sector are really aggressively hiring the IT professionals. How can IT workers position themselves to be attractive to industries that are maybe different than what they've worked in before?
Yeah, good question. I think, highlighting the modern technologies or the unique technologies that you have experience with, I think that is something that is going to help. And then certainly, if you can build relationships through networking, with either direct hiring managers or direct, IT leaders that are trying to build out their teams, and or people that might have connections in the industry, someone who can help put you in front of the right person, or introduce you and make a personal introduction. Those are going to be a lot more powerful than just sending your resume out to, 100 different companies blindly. So if you can build those relationships and maybe focus less of your time, firing off and spamming people with your resume and trying to find a job in that way, and spend more of that time building relationships, trying to get, meet people for coffee, have a quick, someone will give you 5 or 10 minutes of their time to give you some advice, take a look at your resume, give you a knee-jerk reaction, whatever it is. Those sorts of relationships can go a long way, and you'll just make yourself memorable to more people, and it makes it more likely that you'll cross paths with someone who's gonna find you to be the right fit.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I was talking about earlier from this article, that big shift that's kind of happening right now. Eric, what is your opinion on what the future of this is going to look like? Do you see this shift continuing, or how do you kind of see the IT hiring landscape kind of developing in the next few years?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you have a big technology disruption like we're seeing now with AI, you are going to see job disruption. So people's jobs are going to change. Some jobs will get lost, some will get created. And so, you saw it with like automation in factory floors. When that happened, people were worried that all the factory jobs would go away. The factory jobs didn't really go away, but they changed. You had to become less of a manual laborer, and you had to be, use your brain more to operate machinery and to oversee, if you will, the technologies that allow you to do your job. So I think the same is true for IT and knowledge-based workers in particular, people that are relying on information analysis, thought leadership, all that stuff. The AI is going to disrupt those jobs. I think the people that are most risk of losing their jobs are the ones, oddly enough, the ones that refuse to use AI or refuse to embrace it. I think those are the ones that are most at risk. So I would say, instead of being worried that AI might eliminate your job, and you might be afraid of, sleeping with the enemy or whatever you want to call it, because you're embracing the exact thing that you were worried about disrupting your job, view it as something that's actually going to help you and probably prevent you from being at risk of losing your job if you can effectively use AI in your career.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of AI, that's actually what our next newsworthy article is going to be on. So it said, kind of like what you were just talking about, Eric, AI-driven layoffs are coming, but not exactly how people are thinking, is exactly what this article was talking about. So this new research on how AI will reshape the job market just came out, and it's not just all hype about AI. The report predicts almost 500,000 US jobs could be lost by 2030 due to AI-driven automation. Some big takeaways from this article were some most at-risk roles are in heavy, repetitive back office functions like claim processors, payroll, paralegals, or customer service reps. These are prime targets for generative AI, chatbots, and robotic process automation. While those are maybe changing, those roles are, there's new opportunities within AI. So while some jobs may disappear, Forrester expects AI augmented roles to grow. For example, customer service reps who use AI co-pilots to handle complex issues, or analysts who let AI do the grunt work while they focus on interpretation and strategy. So the key point from this is it isn't just a one-for-one swap. Entire workflows are really being reconstructed, and the value is shifting to humans who can supervise, refine, and apply AI outputs effectively. The bottom line is real disruption isn't just job losses, it's widening the gap between professionals who can work with AI and those that can't. So I know you kind of just touched on all this, but if AI is cutting back on back office headcount, how can workers in these roles reposition themselves to stay relevant within that role if it's shifting completely, besides maybe just like learning AI? Is there anything else they can do?
What I would do if I were a customer service rep, let's just say, and I'm worried that my job's at risk because an AI agent could potentially do my job for me, is I could do one of two things. I could be afraid of it, stick my head in the sand, and just hope it doesn't affect me, which is probably, there's nothing more helpless than just leaving it to fate or chance. If you don't want to leave it to fate or chance, then the other option would be to just embrace it, know that it's coming, and be the one that's on the forefront of it and be part of the disruption rather than being disrupted by it. So what I mean by that is if you can be more specific to rather than just say, to your point, go learn AI, you'll be fine. That's not what I'm suggesting. But what I am suggesting is think about how, get ahead of it and be part of the solution. How could AI actually do my job for me? Maybe I go get and play around with AI agents and create something that's doing my job for me, that I'm interacting with, that I'm creating, that I can demonstrate to a company to say, hey, I know how to set up these AI agents. I know customer service really well because I've been doing it my whole career. I know the human part of it and what's to be expected. I can create and help create the AI agents that can automate these processes. Now, all of a sudden, you're putting yourself in a thought leadership position of being on the forefront of the disruption rather than just waiting for it to happen. Now, over time, you're going to be super valuable because if you're crafting those sorts of solutions, you're still leveraging your experience and your human knowledge as a customer service expert in this case. But now you're adding that AI agent on top of it, and you're using your knowledge to create something that companies want, which is more efficient and more effective, scalable ways of addressing customer service in that example. So that's what I would do. And it is exactly what we've done as a company too. If you think about it, consultants are at risk too. We're just as much at risk, I would say, as a customer service rep or a lot of these other, you talked about IT help desks earlier in the episode about how IT support desks are becoming less common now because of automation. Same is true with consulting. And so what we've done is we've actually created an AI tool that does our jobs not for us completely, but it does a lot of the work we had been doing and billing clients for. So now we're reducing cost to clients. We're spending less effort on manual, tedious things that we used to bill clients for. Now AI is doing that. It's a lot cheaper for clients. It's causing us less revenue per project, but now we're winning more business because clients really like the fact that we're using AI. So it's sort of like it's almost counterintuitive in some ways. Because in one hand, you may think, well, wow, that sounds really stupid as a consulting leader to just automate your own business and cannibalize your own business. But actually what we're doing is we're just making ourselves more valuable to our clients to where there's more demand for it. And we're ahead of the curve on AI adoption just in the way we consult, which our competitors haven't caught up yet. Our larger competitors, I think, are going to take a really long time to catch up just because they move slower and they have more to lose in the short term by using AI. So I think if you can have that same mentality, that sort of creative destruction mentality that is common, it's commonly discussed in academia. That's what I would do is just really embrace it, lean into it, and make it become part of the solution rather than being disrupted by it.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other question with this to kind of get away from maybe the employees that are going to be affected, but to more focus on the leadership side of things. For leaders, what's the smarter move? Do you deploy people in AI augmented roles or reduce staff, relying more on heavy automation, or is it kind of a mix of both? What does that look like for leadership?
Well, most leaders we work with in our client base are in situations where they don't have a lot of excess capacity. They don't have a lot of bodies. They in many cases they're short staffed. They can't fill roles. It's hard to find good people. All that stuff. So honestly, I don't see, at least right now with our clients, I don't see headcount reductions being in the immediate future with AI. Instead, what it's doing is making the workloads more manageable for people, and it's making them better at their jobs. That's really the play that we're seeing with most organizations. I don't think we have any clients that I can point to that are saying this is a headcount play or a headcount reduction play. Most of them are saying, no, we just want to be more effective. We want to give our people the tools they need to be better at their jobs. And that's the way most of them are viewing it. Now, I'm sure there are situations like you've alluded to. There's situations where jobs are being lost or reduced, but we just aren't seeing it yet, in terms of the clients we work with. So I think there's so much low-hanging fruit that AI could tackle in terms of just making our jobs more manageable and helping us do the work that we need to do with the people we have that we just haven't been able to do really well in the past because we haven't had the right tools. Now AI allows you to do that. And so that's the way I view it, at least in the short to intermediate term future.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And if you're looking for a job and you're watching this podcast, it's your lucky day because our guest is about to dive into all of that within the IT space.
Yes, and he's someone you need to know if you're looking for a job or if you just are looking to navigate your career. He's a guy that can help connect you with contract and permanent placement types of roles via Lander Talent, which is a company that he and I started together. It's meant to complement and fill a need that our other company, Third Stage Consulting, does not fill, which Third Stage Consulting is an advisory firm. We still continue to do that type of work, but there's also a need that Lander is filling that Third Stage does not fill, which is if I need to build my internal team and build the right resources internally to augment the consultants I might bring in, then how do I do that? And that solution is now through Lander Talent as a way that we help our clients do that. So he's the CEO of the company. We're going to bring him on the show here in just a moment to talk about IT careers in general, just how to navigate your career, how to find the right resources if you're looking for resources, all that good stuff. We're going to get into that deeper dive conversation with him here in just a moment. And then later in the show, I'll share my own lessons that I've experienced, 5 lessons I wish I knew before I started my consulting career. So we'll continue with that career advice theme in this episode here in just a moment. But first, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
How can you see into my eyes like open doors?
I'm excited to announce the release of our 2025 Digital Transformation Report. It's available now on the Third Stage Consulting website, www.thirdstage-consulting.com. This report gives you an unbiased, technology-agnostic insight to help you optimize your organization's projects for success. Get your copy today using the QR code in front of me or on our website.
I recently published my first book. It's called The Final Countdown, Strategies to Reach the Third Stage of Digital Transformation. And I wrote this book because I really wanted to find a concise way to share some of my knowledge around digital strategy and how to get started on a digital transformation journey. So in this book, I cover 3 different sections. I cover the people, process, and technology aspects of transformation, with the idea that it's meant to be a starting point, a launching pad for organizations and team members that are going through digital transformations. So I encourage you to buy this book. You can get it electronically, you can get it paperback, or you can get it in hard copy as I'm holding here in front of you. You can get it by going to thefinalcountdown.com. You can also search for it on Amazon if you shop at Amazon. Otherwise, just go to thefinalcountdown.com. Love to hear your feedback on this book as well. So I hope you check it out and hope you enjoy.
Wake me up inside. I can't wake up. Wake me up inside. Call my name and save me from.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 239. My name is Eric Kimberling here at Darian Chwialkowski. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday at transformationgroundcontrol.com. And this show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, produced by Major Tom Productions. So feel free to reach out to us if you'd like to learn more about either company. If you're looking for help with your digital transformations, we can certainly help at Third Stage Consulting. And if you're looking to collaborate with us on this podcast and other content that we create, you can reach out to us at Major Tom Productions, which you can find contact information below. So excited for our next guest, someone who's been on the show, I think once or twice. I can't remember if it's only been once or maybe it's a couple times now. I've definitely done a couple of YouTube videos with him as well. He's someone that is my business partner in a venture called Lander Talent, which is complementary to Third Stage Consulting. It does staffing, whereas Third Stage Consulting does advisory consulting work. So we thought we'd have him on the show to talk about IT careers and how to navigate those careers, and also IT leadership and how to build the right team for your organization, how to attract and retain the right talent for your IT department. So all that being said, Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Eric, thanks for having me on. And I'm joining from Los Angeles, California.
Great to have you here today. It's been a while since you've been on the podcast. And since you were last on the podcast, you and I have entered into a venture together, starting a company called Lander Talent. So you're the CEO, I'm the chairman. We're working together to get this thing going as far as providing staffing options to organizations throughout the world as it relates to their IT staffing needs. But tell us to start, if you don't mind, maybe actually start with your background, and then I want to get into why Lander Talent. Why did we decide to do that? So let's start with your background, because it's pretty unique and different than most staffing people I know.
Yeah, of course. So I started in entertainment. That's my background. I cast hundreds, maybe thousands of hours of television for every network and streaming company that you could think of. So I came from this world of finding the right fit for the right role. Sometimes that's, a contestant who went on to win $1 million. Sometimes that's helping a former pop star become a, TV host. And it's something that I loved and something that I was great at. And, as I aged, I wanted to get into something new, and, staffing felt very similar. It felt like, okay, this is a natural progression. Let me go find the right people for the right role at big old companies. And so that's what I've been doing for the last, better part of this decade. So
interesting. So
yeah.
it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, or maybe you can fill in the gaps here. But
Yeah.
It seems like if I'm thinking of what that must be like, having worked in Hollywood and doing casting and then moving into recruiting, it seems like you would have a unique sixth sense around the intangible feel or, cultural fit, things like that maybe don't show up on a resume. Is that true? Because it seems like when you're casting, it's not about credentials necessarily, although I imagine that's part of it. But it seems like a big part of that would just be, does this feel right? Does this feel like a good fit with our audience or what we're trying to produce here?
Yeah, I think that's a little bit of an unfair advantage. If you come from a world where you've had 10,000 hours of interviews, it does make it a little bit easier to spot talent, or a lot easier. And it is there is so much about the feeling, like you mentioned, like what makes somebody a good fit, because the talent is a given. Ideally, if you're applying for a role, you and everyone else applying for the role has the skills. So it's what are those things that differentiate you from the competition? What makes you a good fit? And what is this company, or what is, in my past life, what is this show? What does it really need?
Right. So you've been in the recruiting space now for what has been about 5 years. It was right during COVID, right? Was when I think you were telling me you first got into it. And that was probably a good time to make a switch from television or entertainment at a time when it was probably hard to do your job with casting and whatnot. But so you've been doing this 5 years now. Why Lander Talent? Like what made you decide, and why do you think Lander Talent fills such a unique need in the IT staffing space?
I think IT staffing it's noisy. It's transactional. I'm sure anybody who is a hiring manager who's watching this right now can just go ahead and search their inbox, and there's a just checking in message that they get every 16 hours from recruiters, and it's cold. It's transactional. You don't have it's not authentic. It's not built with candidates in mind. It's not built with hiring managers in mind. And I think really what we saw is an opportunity to build a better experience, build something that people want to be a part of, build, hopefully a movement of people who are aligned and get everything about what we're doing and everything about what, needs to be done in terms of mission. So I think really building something with heart, with people at the core, and focusing on that experience and making the experience better for both sides is really, I think, the heart of a lot of the conversations you and I have had.
Yeah. And it seems like, the transactional aspect is an important, nuance that I know we're trying to overcome. And you've also done a really nice job of providing a lot of value, even since before we started Lander Talent. I mean, this is how you and I met, was through social media on LinkedIn. I started following you probably, I don't know, year and a half ago, maybe. And that's how we got connected. But one thing that's really unique about you that I don't see other recruiters doing is you're out there giving constant advice and direction to people that are looking to build their careers, whether it's in IT or not. I mean, the stuff you put out there is relevant to any field, really. So tell us about that. How did you get into the whole content creation? You've become somewhat of a LinkedIn guru. You've amassed a huge following in a very short period of time. And I think I've told you before, I've never seen anyone that's grown their audience so quickly, and it continues to grow very quickly. So what is it? How did you get into that aspect of your career?
So I was working with a company, and essentially everyone was like, "Hey, let's do this. Let's get on board. Let's put it out there. I think that this is the future." Like, we discovered the secret to business in the 2020s is social media, which I guess has been the secret to things for quite some time. So, like not necessarily ahead of the curve, but for LinkedIn, I think it feels like kind of like an early move, and everybody that I worked with at the time did not stick with it, which I did. I just ran with this thing. And Eric, I think we've had plenty of conversations about this. I was off social media, like altogether, not using it. I wasn't even really using LinkedIn much. And I don't know, like I just ran with it. Like I got excited. I noticed, people weren't providing the value that I thought candidates deserved. And I was like, okay, I'll just tell it like it is. Like, what would I need to know if I was getting, what do I wish I had when I moved into staffing from producing television? And that's really where I started. Like, how could I have been better in interviews? How could I, promote myself or get promoted faster? How could I move through my career more strategically? What do I need to be asking people? What mindsets do I need to have? And so I just wrote to, me in my 30s. I was like, or me in my 20s. I was like, here's what I wish I could give you, kid. And I think it struck a chord, at least for some folks. So thanks to everybody who follows and comments. And I'm so flattered that it grows every day.
Yeah, it's right around 35,000 followers. And I just pulled up your LinkedIn page here, and just to give the audience some, just some context of the types of things you post. I mean, just today you posted something about 7 resume mistakes costing you credibility, which I think everyone wants to know about, how to improve the way they position themselves and market themselves to recruiters. And then, you also put a lot of just good one-line reminders out there about, things you need to remember, that sort of thing. So it's really interesting. And you have this creative side of you that I don't see a lot on LinkedIn. You have a very creative way of bringing some pizzazz, or some, not flash, but just some really interesting way of presenting this content that could, let's be frank, I mean, this can be kind of boring if you let it be, this whole staffing recruiting idea.
Thank you. I appreciate the compliment. I try to keep it interesting. I try to bring some past life creativity with me into staffing, and I'm glad that it's seen. And thank you. I'm beyond flattered, man.
Oh yeah, you bet. Yeah, and so be sure to follow Jonathan. If you don't follow him on LinkedIn, he puts out great content, and he's just a good contact to have in the industry. But from your perspective, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see IT professionals making when they're managing their careers, or just navigating changes in their careers, that sort of thing?
A big one is there's no operating thesis. Like, what is it that I solve? What is the thing that I tackle? What is the thing that I do? Like, really, using recursive thinking and getting to the most specific example that you can in starting from that place is really important. I think that coupled with proof is really important. And it's not that people don't have proof that they're great in their career, but it's not always reflected in, in a resume. And I think so many resumes look and sound the same and have for, the 20 plus years that I've been working. It's a lot of, I managed this, I oversaw this. Bring every single thing, every one of those things that you manage, everything that you oversee, everything that you are responsible for should have a number and tie to metrics and direct proof, and talk about the actual impact that you've made. And then I think a third one, if I had to add, would be role drift. Like really just kind of saying yes to everything inside of the role that you're in, or saying yes to every role that comes along if you're a contractor and you're looking for the next opportunity. I guess it's most people move roles because it's time, not necessarily because this is maybe it's 50-50, but whether you're moving for out of necessity or you're moving because you need to make your next leap, don't just accept the first thing unless it's really great and it's what you want to do. Don't drift into something that this feels right, but does it come back to that thesis, to that important, this is what I solved, this is what I'm great at, here's all the proof, what's the next logical step, what's the next step available?
Yeah, it's almost like you're painting a picture of what it would look like to work with you. Is that so?
You got it.
You're getting it? I mean,
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. Yeah,
you're not just saying,
you should be in this industry. You should be in staffing.
That's a good idea. We should start a company together.
Let's do it, dude. Let's do it. Yeah.
That's funny. So with that in mind, then how do job seekers, how can they stand out better? What are some of speaking of specifics, do you have, without mentioning names, do you have candidates that you or examples of what a candidate has done in the past to really stand out and really, make a difference and differentiate themselves?
Yeah, I was chatting with a product manager last week and just kind of going through, I said project manager, and it was like 3 times that they kept kind of telling me all these times that they'd like really reduced risk, like really like, here are these things that I nailed, right? And I think that's what you have to get to. Like, what are times that you've reduced risk? What have you done to increase throughput? How have you helped impact decisions? Like all of those things are really important to share. Know the context of who the buyer is. Is it the pet of a PMO? Is it a CIO? Is it a hiring manager? And what do each of those people care about? I guess it's likely that there are a lot of people involved in that process of bringing you into a new company. But where does that stop? Who is the person that you will ultimately answer to, and what are they going to want to see? So, if it's a CIO, they're going to want to know about, risk and time and how you've managed risk and how you've impacted and how you've, reduced time to delivery. Engineering directors are going to care about throughput, and PMO cares about predictability. So you want to make sure that you hit those things. So build yourself a little folder of proof in every job you ever work in, and just drop what you did. Just share that and have that because you're going to need it later.
Yeah. Being able to show and illustrate specific examples. And it sounds like you're saying you want to speak the language and hit the hot buttons of the person that you're trying to get the attention of, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Interesting. So you started talking about the soft skills and some of the intangible feeling type stuff that you look for and that you're so good at identifying, having come from Hollywood. But what role do soft skills like communication, adaptability, and other intangibles that maybe don't quite show up on a resume easily, how do those soft skills compare to technical expertise, and how would you sort of prioritize or balance the two?
I think the technical skills have to be a given. Like, we have to assume at the very least you're competing against the best people. And then on top of that, we also, obviously there's the emergence of agents and how those are being used, or people who are augmenting their own skills with AI. So I think that the technical skills have to be a given, and you have to lean into the soft side. So the tech skills have to be that backbone. I keep saying have to, but they have to be there. And then the soft skills have to be the thing that allow you to shine, allow you to show why you're going to make an impact. Everyone wants to work with somebody they're going to enjoy working with, but they also want to work with somebody who is going to have their back, is going to make their job easier, is going to make things more predictable. So I think all of those elements are important, and maybe it's the same thing that I think about of like being a kid and playing baseball or hockey or you name it. You want to be a good teammate, and allowing that to show is just as important as showing that, you're going to have great stories at lunch, or, want to talk around the water cooler, or whatever elements that, for you make a good teammate, make people's jobs easier, be pleasant to work with, be the kind person.
Yeah. Is there a way, if I'm a candidate and I'm trying to get your attention as either a recruiter and or a hiring manager, is there a way I can shine through in that way on a resume? Like, how do I get your attention in the first place? If I can get in front of you, sure, I can have a conversation with you. We can build a connection in a relationship, and you can see my value. But if I can't get your attention or even get a conversation with you, how do you overcome that piece of it? Because it seems like resumes are so, to use your point or your word earlier, it's very cold. Either you hit the checklist of the things I'm looking for on paper, or you don't. And if you don't, I'm moving on. I don't care about cultural fit or soft skills at that point. How do I overcome that dynamic of, as a job seeker?
It's tricky. That's really hard. I don't want to say it's impossible to make that happen on a resume, but the executive summary, like everything that you're sharing about your experience that is introducing you, that's your chance. That's where you have to allow that to shine. And I've seen very few actually thread that needle and make a resume interesting. So if that's the area that you want to make interesting, you have to study copywriting. You have to get into the nitty gritty and nerd out and go make the most of every single word in every single sentence. And for it to work in a resume it's mission impossible, man. You can make a whole movie about that there. But I think it also can really come through in the, messages that you send to recruiters and hiring managers. I think that's probably the number one spot. LinkedIn has made it maybe a little too easy with all of these AI tools that are built in. And I think the assumption now is everybody uses, Claude, ChatGPT, you name it, to sort of plug their messages in, but make it human, just make it real. I don't want to read a giant wall of text that is just clearly, something that has been studied translated by ChatGPT to get impact. Just why are you reaching out? Why is this going to be cool? Like, just please treat me and every other recruiter as a human being, and just reach out the same way you hope we would. I think is something that goes a very, very, very long way.
Yeah. Very, very good advice. Here's I'm actually having trouble with the LinkedIn feed, but I'm looking at it on my phone here, so I can't put the question on the screen here, unfortunately. But yeah. This question is from Tom on LinkedIn. It's good to see you, Tom. I know him. He's actually a client of ours. So Tom's question here is, do you feel that age is a detriment in technology, or are organizations looking to capitalize on experience, especially in higher level roles? And this is something I've been hearing more lately. I don't know if it's just coincidence or what, but I've been hearing people comment about age and how, at a certain age, like my age or older, I would say, you're starting to, I'm starting to hear people, maybe it's just because I'm getting older and so all my peers are getting older and talking more about it. But is this a real thing? Is ageism a problem? Is it, how do you overcome the issue of age versus youth?
It's an interesting thing. It's like kind of like on both ends of the age spectrum. Like if you're very young or you're more senior in your career, like there's sort of like this similar standard. I don't know what exactly the sweet spot is anymore age-wise, but I'm seeing a lot of that myself. In terms of content, in terms of what's being put out there, or what, maybe feelings that people have themselves. So Tom, I don't think, like if you are very, very senior in your career, that there are people who are necessarily, this is a big scary word, but discriminating against you in your career. And I certainly hope that's not the case, because that's not spoken to me, at least by people at companies that we work with. I'm not hearing any of that. I do think experience is always an advantage. That battle tested candidate always is somebody that I have in the mix for anything that I'm working on. So yeah, I think that there is, in terms of the content that I'm seeing, I'm like, okay, what am I, maybe there's something that I'm missing, but in the conversations that I'm having day to day in business, no, I'm not seeing that.
Yeah, that's good. And here's a question from Darian on LinkedIn. Darian asked, what are some of the most impactful metrics you've seen candidates share in IT and transformation context? So you were talking about being specific and getting really detailed and painting that picture of what you actually did. And I know a lot of your recruiting background over the last few years has been in SAP and ERP in particular, but do you have examples of effective use of metrics and sort of illustration of in that way that you were talking about before?
Yeah, there's two, and they matter more than everything. It's money and time. Like, if you can show how you positively impacted money and how you positively impacted time, you have done more than 90+% of people who will apply. And that is absolutely everything that buyers being, managers, directors, VPs, C-suite, that's what they want to see. They want to know that you can help save them money, make them more money, and save them time, do things faster. That's the name of the game. Do those things and you win.
Right.
I'll put it as simply as that. You will win if that is what you are sharing in your resume.
Yeah. So I saved the company this much time, I saved the company this much money, or I implemented, this far under budget, or whatever the metric might be. Something along those lines is what the type of metric you'd want to share, or the type of specifics you want to get into.
You got it. So I deliver this program 6 months early. We save $10 million, and you tie that to one of your job tasks. That's the sweet spot. I did this. It led to this savings this much faster. That's the recipe. That's the formula.
What I've seen be super powerful and resonate really well is if you've come into a situation that's kind of a gnarly situation you're walking into and you've turned it around. So if you could go in and say, like, if you have the experience where you've gone into a project, it was way over budget, it was off track, whatever, and you were able to come in and turn it around, and you're able to point to specific metrics around that, that seems pretty powerful too. If you have that background, I would for sure highlight that, really showcase that on your resume, because that is such a rare skill set. And it seems like a lot of hiring people or IT leaders want that. They want those battle scars. They want to see someone who's been in some pretty gnarly situations and found a way out of it.
I totally agree. And it's another great way to use time and money. They thought it was going to take 12 months. They're 18 months in. I came in, did this in 6 months. They'd already spent this much. They thought they were going to have to spend this much more. They didn't. Instead, I saved them this. Absolutely. Yeah. If you can turn things around when it's already a bad situation, you can take their bad numbers and make them your good numbers. That's the move. Yeah.
Right. Makes sense. So what about AI? How should IT professionals be thinking about AI? I know you talked about AI can be used to write resumes, but that's inhuman. You want to make sure you don't lose the humanity of your resume and the content you're creating. But what about just your career in general as it relates to AI? How do you future-proof your career, if there is such a thing? But how do you address AI as far as a skill you might have, or how you might use AI in your job? What have you seen work there?
Don't fight the tool. Like, that's, I think, the most important thing. Is weird as it is to say, years into us having AI, if you're using it right now, you're ahead of the curve. I kind of like always use my parents as the benchmark of like how much they're using it. My dad's using it a bit. My mom's not using it at all. And so I know that, you're ahead of a ton of people, but that doesn't necessarily apply to your career specifically. I think large scale AI programs inside of, huge companies are not as powerful right now as you as an individual user using AI in your job that is specific to you. If you are allowed to do that, right? Like every company and is different in terms of what is allowed. If you are allowed to use AI in your job, you should be using it to do absolutely everything you can. Everything you can to make things easier, to make your decision process more linear, more rapid, and to enhance everything that you do. Because it's going to make you understand tools more deeply as they become more advanced and as you have more opportunities for those things to grow. And ideally, as your company or companies that you work at the future start bringing on tools, you can help advise and guide those tools. Because, I think we're all looking at the future of what work looks like differently. We don't know. So if you can impact the decision of the tools, how to use those tools to grow in your career and make your job and other jobs easier, it makes you far more valuable than just the person who completes the task.
Yeah.
That is a part of you. Yeah.
I'm here with Jonathan Whipple. We're talking about careers and technology. We've got a lot more to cover, but first we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
I don't mind letting you down easy, but just give it time. If it don't hurt now, but just wait a while.
I want to share a little bit of information about Third Stage Consulting and who we are. Third Stage Consulting Group is an independent, technology agnostic provider of consulting services to help clients through their digital transformations. We help with digital strategy and software selection, as well as implementation planning. And during implementation, we provide services related to program management, organizational change, business process improvement, as well as enterprise architecture. These are just some of the services we provide. We have offices in North America as well as Europe and Asia Pacific. So if you'd like to learn more, I encourage you to check out our resource center, which includes a number of resources that will help you through your digital transformation. And you can access that for free using the QR code here or the links below. You can also reach out to me directly if you'd like to discuss your digital transformation and brainstorm ideas on how to improve where you're headed on your journey.
The last thing you want to have happen is for your digital transformation to end up in court. I've been doing this for 20 years and I have seen everything. My name is Marcus Harris. I'm a software and technology attorney focusing my practice on drafting and negotiating software-related contracts and litigating software disputes across the country. Feel free to reach out to us at taftlaw.com. We'd love to talk to you about the litigation process and what you can expect.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 239. My name is Eric Kimberling here at Darian Chwialkowski. This is the tech agnostic podcast that covers everything related to digital transformation. You can find new episodes every Wednesday at transformationgroundcontrol.com. And I'm here with Jonathan Whipple. We're talking about careers and technology. On the consulting side of what we do, so we have two companies that I'm affiliated with. One is Lander Talent, which does staffing, and then there's Third Stage Consulting, which does the more advisory and consulting type of work. There's a lot of connections between the two, but what we're talking about here is more building out an internal team versus a consulting team. But one thing we're seeing on the consulting side of what we do is that even the more forward-thinking organizations right now, where we're advising them on AI strategy, because that's a big offering for us right now. We have 3 clients in particular where they're not looking at ERP. They're not looking at your traditional tech upgrade. They're looking for just AI strategy to help us figure out how to use AI in our organizations. And even these forward-thinking organizations are just barely getting started. Like, they're barely scratching the surface. They barely understand how this technology could possibly affect them. So if you can show that on your resume, I would think that's going to be a pretty powerful differentiator to say, okay, this is, is this just hype? Because there is a lot of hype around AI, but this person actually, I see how they actually used it, and they're giving me examples of how they use it to do their jobs better. It seems like that'd be something you'd want to highlight, on your resume. Is that true?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. I think that is something that every company is looking for. It's one of those, like, if you're a hiring manager, if you're going to do a quick search of a resume and look for keywords, that's your AI is going to be one of them, and you're going to see how that's being used by every candidate, for sure. Yeah.
Very interesting. So when you're When you're talking to CIOs and hiring managers, then if you sort of shift gears here and look at it from the perspective of a CIO, VP of IT, IT director, as any sort of hiring manager in IT, what do they say they value most, or what are they really looking for? If you're sort of stepping into their shoes, what are they looking for?
Like people who really are able to make big decisions with limited info. Ideally they have all the info, but they want somebody that they can count on, that they can rely on. I think change hygiene is important. I think stakeholder steadiness is important. I think really they want people who can reduce risk and really increase time to value. I think those are all important aspects for CIOs right now. They want people that they can trust. And I think each of those kind of contributes to that.
Right. So it's not just certifications they're looking for, because a lot of times it seems like job seekers focus on, or maybe borderline obsess about, what certifications do I have? What training do I have? And I'm sure that helps. I don't want to be dismissive of that, but it seems like there's a lot more to it than just, do I check the box of being certified in this one tool or this one technology or whatever? It's more, again, coming back to the intangibles. It's like, how do you let those intangibles shine through on your resume as you're looking for work?
I think that's the core of it. I think certifications are important, especially if you haven't worked in a role where you have exposure to a specific technology. I certainly would have anxiety if I were going into a role and I didn't, I'm like, okay, this is the next step in my career, and there is this brand new technology, and I have not used it, but I have gotten certified in it, and I've used it in a sandbox environment. I try every way that I could to showcase that myself, so I get the importance there. But kind of going back to Tom and Tom's question about experience and being battle tested, this is a super simple for me, pertains to me example. Like if something new came along that was a large language model that I could chat with, like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, but it's brand new, say it's DeepSeek. Of course I can use DeepSeek. I've played with all of these other technologies and know how that works. So I think, there's a lot of time spent on certifications and what should I get and what should I have here. That could be better spent in framing all the work you have done even better.
Yeah. Now flipping that around a bit here, if I don't have a lot of experience, here's a question from Darian on LinkedIn. What can younger professionals learn from the more battle tested peers to fast check credibility? So if I don't have as much experience that you're talking about here, maybe I'm just starting out or just a few years into my career, maybe I'm looking to make a shift into IT, how do I leverage, or, how do I address that?
I think it is always helpful to find mentors. I always want to learn from the best, and I think coming directly out of university or coming out of whatever program that you've been learning, whatever particular technology you focused on, you want to get out there and get in your career. But I'm a networker, man. Like I am a busy bee myself. So I'm like, okay, who can I connect with and chat with and learn this new thing about? So there's this guy that I like in the SAP community specifically that I love that does this, and his name's Gagan Mohan Singh. He is an incredible SAP mentor. So I would look for the Gagan Mohan Singhs of whatever it is that I do, and just be like, hey, I'm trying to learn this. Like, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? Not, hey, I've got this experience and I've done this, and like, I need your help. Just reach out to somebody like a friend and say, hey, what can I do? Also, hey, here's a really cool article I think you might like, because this is the sort of stuff that you do. Try and just genuinely connect and get some feedback and get a relationship going where somebody can guide you, and where you can find someone who can guide you is something that will have immense value. Yeah. So I think mentors are always important to have.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that's a good point. And I don't, as I think to people that I've hired and the ones that have been most successful in getting my attention, it hasn't been the people that just sent me an email with a resume that said, "Hey, I've got 20 years of ERP experience and blah, 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 blah." Because I get those messages all the time. So unfortunately, you're just like everyone else that sends me an email. If you send me an email, even if you do have that great experience, it just doesn't resonate. But the people that have been most effective in cutting through the noise have been the ones that do exactly what you said. They ask for help. The ones that reach out to me and say, "Hey, I'm just starting my career. I like your channel." Maybe they've stroke my ego a little bit, and I feel a little flattered. So I'm gonna keep reading the message because I'm a guy. I have an ego. So so the human, it speaks to the humanity of me. But those people I've hired multiple people that way. The people that didn't ask for a job, they asked for help. And that's a subtle but important difference, because I think everyone wants to help. Even if I can't hire you, I would love to help you. Maybe I can introduce you to someone, especially if I like you as a person and I want to see you succeed, even if it's not at third stage or with a lander, through a lander talent client. So that's a good point. I hadn't really thought about it that way, but that is a great point. I think younger people have an advantage where they can kind of work around the system a little bit, or kind of create their own relationships and build a personal connection, because that personal connection is going to be a lot more powerful than the 20 years of experience that you wish you had that you don't, in my opinion.
I couldn't agree more, man. Like it is a major advantage. And I actually was thinking about you and Kelly and the story you guys told me about somebody that you brought onto your team. So I know firsthand from that. Yeah.
A few of those examples. And so I think that's a good lesson for those that are trying to cut through the noise. What about shifting gears then and looking at, if I'm an IT leader and I'm trying to build out my IT team and I'm trying to, build the right skill sets and trying to build the right competencies in-house, build the right chemistry. What are some of the key things I should be thinking about or focusing on, or risks I should be avoiding when I'm trying to build out my team?
Vague ownership. I think vague ownership is a big one. You want to be clear of who owns what. I think that it would surprise some people how many companies where everything is really shared responsibility. And I think shared responsibility and shared mission and rowing in the right direction is a really wonderful thing. And I think it's absolutely essential for culture. But I think some people mistake that for, wait, that's how we should do everything. We should share what these responsibilities are. I think there is a lot of role sprawl. So like on the front end, when you're putting a job description out there and they're Frankenrecs of we're looking for a unicorn and it's just we're patching together 7 different jobs and seeing if it's there is a clear indicator of there's a lot of things that probably aren't working or are not working as smoothly as they should, and trying to patch those as simply as possible. So I think being clear about what is actually missing from your team or from your company is really important, and zeroing in on those things one at a time, so you can build stability. You don't want to just stretch some tape over a dam and hope that it holds. I think that's really important. I think general, I write about this a lot, but general interview theater. I think a lot of companies want to put their best face forward because they want, and the same with people who are coming in and interviewing, they're putting their best face forward. But companies don't always talk about these are the actual problems. Like, hey, there's we're at DEFCON 1 right now. This is what's going on, and we have to fight this fire out of the gate. I think that's important. It can't just be all vibes. As much as I want every vendor interview to be all vibes, it can't. I think approval mazes are not great, and that can apply to to the actual interview process. How many people have to go through this to really determine somebody is the right fit. That sort of stalled decision making usually is means you need to go back to the drawing board and talk about decisions in general. And then maybe this applies a little bit to what I was just sharing, but no onboarding runway. actually get like, okay, cool. Now we do have somebody who's sharing problems, but you can't really drop somebody into firefight on day one unless they are Tom. Then Tom can come in and fight on day one because he's got all the experience and he's battle tested, but not for everybody. So
Yeah.
Those are like sort of the culture clues or some of the red flags I'd look out for if I were, hiring or I were building my own team right now.
Yeah. Do you end up advising and clients, those hiring managers that come to you and to us for staffing needs? Do you end up advising them on that a lot? Like, hey, before you bring this resource in, you should really think about doing A, B, and C to build the right environment for them.
Yeah, that's a really important aspect. And I think looking at things and in consulting and what the hiring process and what the internal culture is really important. Although, you and I can't ever set another company's internal culture. We can certainly, if we see something that might be helpful, we can always point that out. So I think, that's actually one of my favorite parts of the job, beyond just helping, the right person get the right role and a company grow, is go, hey, this, I noticed this, and I think that this will help improve things. Or if you want to do 4 rounds of interviews, you're going to lose 70% of the candidates that are interested in this. Let's get it down to 2 and let's really make impact. So that's one of my favorite things is nerding out on culture and hiring process.
Yeah. And again, it's adding more value than just a transaction or a body that you're putting on a team. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people look at staffing as that, is like, hey, we're just going to, the term, this is somehow a new term for me, but body shop, just like sending people over. I'm trying to remember who this was that said that to me. Like, oh, are you guys just like a body shop? And I was like, what? Because that's my dad's career, is he owned body shops,
an actual body shop,
like collision repair shop. Yeah. But I understand the moniker now. Like, okay, so most companies just send bodies over, and I've experienced that, and I've been against competition that does that, but you have to provide more value. Like we built out a very rigorous process, and one of those many steps is actually hiring. Like there's so much more that is involved.
Yeah. And me being, coming from the consulting side of things, just my whole career, I see and appreciate the value of a team-based consulting approach and whatnot. And so, I sort of have that biased lens that I view things through. And that was actually one of the reasons why, one of the reasons it took me so long to figure out a way to dabble or to get into staffing, was because I didn't want to create a body shop. And then as you and I got to know each other, and I saw your style and how you were treating staffing differently, that became very interesting, because I thought, okay, well, we have consulting over here, but what about those people that, whether they want Third Stage to advise them and consult them or not, there's a need over here for some of those same companies that need to build a team. They might need a CIO. They might need an internal project manager, an architect, or someone that they want to have in-house. So that leads to a question, though, around, internal and external resources, contractors versus W-2, full-time employees. What do you see in terms of how IT leaders are finding that balance, between outside resources and internal resources, whether it's part of a transformation or just running an IT department in general?
Great question. I think if it's known work, if it's known and it's ongoing, you're going to want somebody that is full-time on your staff. You want to own the architecture, you want to own the actual knowledge in-house. That is important for, bringing in a permanent individual who owns that specifically. If it's unknown, if it's time boxed, if it's outcome based, consultants are just awesome for that. That's kind of the sweet spot there. And then when you're talking about capacity spikes, if you're talking about specialized skills, that are needed, maybe not indefinitely, that's where you want contractors. So I think if you look at the kind of a general guide, I've already said this, but own your architecture, own the knowledge in-house, require that artifacts be handed off, docs, run books, you name it, and set the exit criteria, like for consultants for contractors at the kickoff. I think those are what I would look at myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the unhealthy dynamics in the IT space that we're trying to overcome with Lander talent is the fact that, over on the consulting side at third stage, we could be doing the best job we could possibly do. But if that client doesn't have the right internal team to support the project, it's like our work is in vain. We did great work, but the project still wasn't successful because the client didn't have the right resources. They didn't have ownership of the project. And what happens a lot of times is this sort of learned helplessness to outsource things to consultants, whether it's us and or what's even more common is you outsource it to like a system integrator. If I'm implementing SAP, I go find the SAP system integrator and I just let them handle the stuff they're good at, which just to some degree you need that outside perspective because you probably don't have it in-house. But to the extent you can build that team in-house and build more ownership and upskill your own team, whether it's through contractors or full-time employees, permanent placements, I feel like that piece has been missing. And that's something that we're hoping to address with Lander. And again, whether or not it's a third stage client or not, doesn't matter with Lander because we just want to help teams build the right resources and the right team out there. But it seems like that ownership is a really important, speaking of outcomes, we're not placing bodies, we're not placing skills, we're creating a situation where clients are taking ownership and accountability for their own IT departments and their own digital transformations.
Absolutely. And I will say this example again, because I like it, but I said it the last time we chatted, like if you have an air conditioning, if you have the HVAC company come out and install air conditioning in your house, you don't want to call them every single time that you want to change the thermostat. My car can drive itself, but I want to know how to drive it if I need to, like those are important things. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Very cool. What's the most overlooked factor in your experience that makes IT teams successful? What's that secret sauce of a high performing team? And we host our annual Digital Stratosphere conference, and I've seen you present on this topic of how to build a dream team and, comparing it, likening it to sports. In sports, that's a big deal. To win, you've got to create this chemistry. It's not just about the stats of the individual players, it's how that team comes together. What is it in IT that creates that secret sauce, that cohesion, that winning team, if you will, within an IT department?
For me, and this is the softest, almost mushy soft of it's mushy soft of soft skills. Empathy, I think, wins the day always in every single team that I've ever been a part of. And I've played sports my entire life from childhood to adult dodgeball, which is something that was a big part of my life for a long time. But it's important to really, to understand the people that you're with and feel that and empathize with them. And I think if you start there, everything else is much easier. But real definition of done is important, like that, especially if you're implementing new technology, that's gotta be done. Done has to be done. And you have to know what done is. That's a lot of done that I said there. But then the real work can start. Then you can actually harness and use the technology. You want to get past done. I think also decision logs are very important. Not just what has been done, but why these things were chosen. You want to be able to look back and reflect on those things. Have handoffs built in and in mind from day one. And all of that starts with done and understanding the why behind the decisions that were made.
Yeah. Very interesting. And here's a related question that builds on what you were just talking about and what I just asked, but Darian on LinkedIn asked, what should leaders do in the first 90 days to ensure that new IT hires succeed?
The clear roadmap. If you start, I think if you take it back all the way to the day zero, having a clear path that people are progressing through. And, we've touched on this already, AI exists and has made that a lot easier. Like, what are the things that I need to do in the first 90 days in this role? But I think make sure that whoever the hire is, that they have the knowledge, that they have everything that, you know, they need to be armed with to actually make impact. If you take those first 90 days and look at them as found money, if there's real impact in those first 90 days, I think that is helpful. And then the real work can start beyond. But I think it starts with, what's the roadmap? What are the expectations? I guess a lot of roles do definitely need to be impactful from day one, or much sooner than 90 days. But look at that ramp, look at the impact that you want that person to make long term, and make sure you are making strides weekly toward the long term impact you need them to deliver. You know, throw them the alley-oop, give them the assist, pass the ball to them.
Right. Yeah. Very, very cool. Here's a question. I'm not sure which direction to take this question, but I'll pull it up anyway. This is on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
This is from Sanjay. Sanjay says, can you discuss a time when you had to make a difficult decision regarding technology investments? And maybe I'll reframe this a little bit around, you know, when it comes to technology investments or technology projects, you know, how important is that in highlighting that on you know, either in terms of when you're looking for a resource, making sure they have that relevant experience for the type of technology you're deploying or investing in, or if you're a job seeker, how much do you want to emphasize specific tools and technologies like that, that you've made investments in over time? How important is that piece of it?
The question. So the way you've reframed that is like, how important is it to highlight a technology that you've worked with if the company is using that technology? Is that the way we're looking at it?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, lean into it. If they're using it, if they're using that technology, lean into that very, very simply. You know, like if you've been using S4HANA for the last few years and the new role you're getting into is an S4HANA implementation, highlight that all day. Because to go back to Sanjay, you know, it probably was a difficult decision to decide on who is going to, you know, who's your ERP. So lean into that technology so they know that they are making the right decision with somebody who has experience with that specifically, if you do have that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And again, that shouldn't be the only thing you focus on, but if that gets their attention, and it obviously gets you past that first filtering stage, because a lot of this, you know, I think maybe it's worth noting, you know, a lot of times recruiting managers or people that are hiring, for example, you to come find the right resource for them, you know, you only have a couple seconds to get the attention of them. You know, and again, back to that transactional cold side of recruiting that can be there. It can be cold in that, you know, hiring managers just want to see S4HANA. If I don't see S4HANA on a resume and I'm implementing S4HANA, then I don't care that you implemented Microsoft or Oracle or whatever. I think it's unfortunate because a lot of times you overlook really good candidates that might actually be a better fit culturally. Maybe it's good that they have an outside different perspective. Sometimes it helps to have experience with multiple tools because it gives you just a different way of thinking about these projects. But you have to get the hiring manager's attention. And if you can highlight those technical skills, then that's going to help you get past that first test, if you will.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very cool. So how should when organizations think about their approach to recruiting and retaining talent in today's market, what are they doing wrong? Like, what are some things that organizations need to do to rethink their approach to recruiting and retention of talent?
I want to be careful about how I say this. Companies don't make the best job descriptions. They don't write the best job ads. And it's that double-edged sword of AI. It's okay, cool. Now I can outsource this part of the job that I really don't like to AI. But it then is this like very long, verbose, loquacious, and I'm intentionally using wordy words because that's how these job descriptions are starting to look. They're very long, they're very bloated, and they don't feel like they speak to a person directly. So I think getting to the humanity of what it is, writing a job description as simply as you can so it can be understood by everybody. And it's not that you have to write things simply so You need to write things simply so it's easy to read, not to rule out whether or not somebody understands the big language that you're using. So I think having clear career ladders is another one that's really important. You want to show paths. You want to give an idea of the mentors that people will have access to. You want to be able to show fast track stories of, we hired somebody for this and, they ended up taking off. They went into an entirely different direction. So I think you want to highlight and have in mind linear growth, but you want to also have examples of non-linear growth, because there are a lot of people who are just achievers who go, okay, cool. So in a year, I can maybe move up slightly and then another year slightly. But for somebody like me that just wants to go out and run and do whatever it is I can and achieve, I want to, if I were joining a new company, I would want somebody to be like, you can go as far as you want, just do the thing. Just show us and add value and find where you can do this. I think scorecards also are important, and those apply in the interview process and how you're going to score things, but also scorecards and how people are making an impact day to day in their roles are important. I am, as always, as we always chat about, like very focused on the soft skill sides, but I do like to make sure that that's measured with ones and zeros and clear stats that show how people are doing their jobs. So
Right.
and then retention, also manager quality, huge. Make sure you've got managers that are leading team first. I think that is beyond important.
Kind of that mid-level management you're talking, like the
Yeah.
the people that are actually you'll be working directly with. You want to make sure that those people are high caliber. Because I think I've seen you post on LinkedIn something to the effect of, I'm paraphrasing, but people don't leave bad jobs; they leave bad managers. I think I've seen you post. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's usually not the job they don't like; it's the boss they don't like.
It's the boss. It's the boss. Very few people look back and remember a job. They remember what it felt like to work there. And all of that comes from who they work for. Yeah.
Now, looking ahead to the future, what do you think the field of IT, careers and staffing, both sides of the equation or both sides of the coin, how do you think it looks in a few years? What should we be preparing for? What's your crystal ball telling you as far as where we're headed in terms of staffing, careers, all that stuff?
I'm never going to be the first to say this, but it's AI everywhere. It's AI co-pilots. It's AI, enhancing everything that you do. And that is amazing that my workday starts and ends with that as well. But proof, like that's the other side of that. Making sure your quote unquote portfolio, your resume is chock full of proof is going to be even more important when we all have access to an infinite intelligence to make us look even better at our jobs. The proof that we are good at our jobs is more important than ever, because we can look like we do.
Right.
And I think data competency, every single team, it touches data. I think understanding that is important. I think, I don't know. I think there's maybe something to platform consolidation. Like we're probably going to start seeing in terms of AI and newer tools, like who is really going to be the breakout in certain areas. But I think AI co-pilots and proof, if I had to like really zero in on two things, make sure you're building proof and use AI to make your job easier, because that's what you're going to be doing indefinitely until we don't have jobs.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
I know. Yeah. There's all the doomsday fortune tellers out there saying that, well, none of us will have jobs at some point in the future, which I don't think is true, but I do think you need to embrace it, whatever you're doing, especially if you are in a corporate white collar job. I mean, you need to be focused on AI, especially the more knowledge based type stuff. But you bring up a good point about the proof, because I think that's really important, because with so many people now presumably using AI to write their resumes and to make it look really good, the ones that do have that differentiating experience and proof, I think that's going to be huge, and AI can't replicate that.
It can't. It can hallucinate that, but it cannot replicate that.
Well, that's the other thing too. I was thinking about when you were talking about AI to write resumes. I know I've used AI to respond to RFPs in the past, requests for proposals, or RFIs, requests for information.
Yeah.
Company reaches out and says, "Hey, we just want to understand more about third stage. Can you share some of your qualifications?" Blah blah blah. So I'll use AI to help write that. But I've noticed that sometimes it'll make stuff up. Like it'll say stuff that's not true. It's not good or bad. It's just like that company is not a client of ours, or we have not done that type of project that it's talking about. But speaking of hallucinations, you do have to be careful that you're not letting AI misrepresent your background. That's the sort of the flip side of this, is you want to make sure you're truthful and not, over exaggerating or whatever. But certainly the proof you have, you want to for sure highlight that, because AI can't do that for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Very good.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you being here today, Jonathan. And best way to reach out to you, I'm assuming LinkedIn, but is that the best way for people to learn more about you?
Yeah. LinkedIn. If you're looking for a job, if you have a resume you want to send over, my email is jw@landertalent.com.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan. Great conversation. Really appreciate having you on the show again. As always, it's a pleasure, and learn a lot from you every time. So hopefully you found value in that too, you, the audience. We're going to debrief on a couple things that he just mentioned and dive into them in a little bit more detail. We're also going to get into the 5 things I wish I knew before I started my career as a consultant. So be sure to stick around. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control.
I met her in a club down in Old Soho, where you drink champagne and it tastes like Coca-Cola.
I'm excited to announce the release of our 2025 Digital Transformation Report. It's available now on the Third Stage Consulting website, www.thirdstage-consulting.com. This report gives you an unbiased, technology-agnostic insight to help you optimize your organization's projects for success. Get your copy today using the QR code in front of me or on our website.
Are you looking for ways to promote your product or service to enterprise technology decision makers and influencers throughout the world, like the ones who listen to this podcast? Major Tom Productions creates media, events, and influencer marketing for B2B technology providers. Our productions are exciting, educational, disruptive, and effective. Most importantly, they create results. Our content is unlike any other in this industry, engaging, influential, and trusted by technology buyers and influencers throughout the world. Each month, our productions reach hundreds of thousands of targeted buyers and decision makers who trust and engage with our honest and tech-agnostic content. With long-tail viral results and engagement with our content, Major Tom Productions provides a way to reach your target market and create awareness, calls to action, and a connection with potential customers. So collaborate with us today. Learn how we can feature your product or service on podcasts such as Transformation Ground Control, Journey to S/4HANA, and Journey to Dynamics 365. We can also feature your brand on our YouTube channel called Digital Transformation with Eric Kimberling, which boasts over 100,000 subscribers and over 2 million video views per year. You can also participate in our in-person events, including our Digital Stratosphere Conference. Contact us today to learn more. We can tailor a marketing campaign that works for you. We look forward to helping more people learn more about and become engaged with your brand.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 239. My name is Eric Kimberling with Darian Chwialkowski. And Darian, we just had Jonathan on the show, talked about careers in tech, how to build the right team, how to retain the right team. What were some of your thoughts and takeaways?
Yeah, I think Jonathan's always great whenever he's on here or YouTube video. He always has a lot of very interesting points that I like. And I think today, my number one thing I think that stood out to me today was when he was talking about taking companies' bad numbers and making them your own personal good numbers. And it's that idea of you have this proof folder that each professional keeps to keep their portfolio of impact metrics that they've made for companies. So I thought that was super interesting and a great point that a lot of people can learn from of taking, your company. Maybe they don't have great numbers right now, but what did you do to change that? So that's always really great. One question I have with that, Eric, is how could companies use the proof folder idea to track transformation wins?
It's a good question. Well, a couple things come to mind. One is if you have a specific, unique deliverable or work product you created that, or that you helped create that somehow was different or helped get things back on track, it can be a good visual piece of evidence that you can show someone and say, hey, here's how I did it. Here's a piece of proof, in addition to just talking about how I did something, I can actually show you a work product. And so I think having examples like that and storing away examples like that as you create them is something that can be very powerful for your portfolio. And then certainly, when you get into like project status reports too, as you look to like how you track budget and time and resources and all that stuff, those are good artifacts that you might want to save as well, because that'll give you some of the ammunition you need to frame that in a way that you could sell it on your resume.
Yeah, absolutely. Another really good part of the conversation I thought that I liked was that soft skills really outshine certifications. I thought that was a really interesting point that a lot of people need to focus on, is while their technical skills are really assumed and maybe gained throughout their career, soft skills are what really can differentiate you, especially in this job market. So with that, Eric, how do CIOs often evaluate these soft skills during a hiring process, though?
I don't think enough of them do. So I can't really answer it because I don't see many that do that well. I mean, we do try to advise clients on that, like, hey, just because you found someone that fits the bill or fits the job description on paper doesn't necessarily mean it's a good fit, and vice versa. You might overlook someone that doesn't have the exact hard skills you want, but they're a great cultural fit. I think, in my experience, the person with lesser hard skills but a better cultural fit, that's just going to be a stronger performer, in my opinion. They're going to fit in better. They're going to stick around longer. Your team's going to like them better. You're going to like them better. They're going to like you better. So all the things point to that being a higher performing situation, even if they are a little weak in certain areas on the technical side. And the thing with technical stuff is you can learn that stuff and you can teach that stuff. The cultural stuff you can't teach. Like I can't, for example, when I hire a consultant, a lot of consultants, I hate to say it, a lot of consultants are arrogant. They know it all. They don't listen. And they can be complete arrogant a-holes at times. There are consultants like that. And I can't teach you not to be an a-hole, or how to not be a jerk. I can't teach you that, but I can teach you if you don't know everything you need to know about a certain technology or about project management or whatever. That stuff's easier to teach. But the personality-based stuff, the cultural stuff, that is really hard to teach. And in fact, I would argue you can't. So focus on that. Make sure that you get that part right. And if you have some deficiencies on the skill side, it's easy enough to fill most of those deficiencies.
For sure. And I know another point you guys made off of that too was that manager quality can be like the number one driver of retention within a company. So should CIOs be training managers as retention strategy more than anything else?
Yeah, that's actually, it was really interesting to hear him say that. And it connected the dots of something I'd seen him post before on LinkedIn about people leaving bad managers, not bad jobs, or they're leaving a manager, not leaving a job when they decide to move on. And I thought that was really interesting because I think that it totally makes sense. And so I think teaching managers how to be effective leaders and to have that empathy and to think differently than they might have had to think when they were first rising up the ranks earlier in their career, it's a different skill set, and they don't all have it. Just because they were good at their competency, a lot of times what happens is people then get elevated into a management role, but they're not really good managers. They just happen to know their domain really well, and that's just the next logical step for them. So someone has to teach them how to be better leaders, how to be a better manager, how to have that empathy, how to how to ask more questions and listen and understand, outside the box of what you might have known earlier in your career. So it is a good point. I think there needs to be more mid-level management types of training, because I think that's where a lot of the problems reside. Now, a lot of the problems also reside at the very top too. There's plenty of organizations where the executives are the problem as well. But yeah, even if you have strong executive leadership and they themselves are good leaders, it doesn't necessarily mean your managers are going to be without the right direction and coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it was a great conversation overall. I feel like he always makes some really cool, interesting points.
Yeah, the Hollywood connection and the casting background he has is definitely interesting, and I can see how that would be so beneficial to someone who's now moved into the technology space for the last several years. So good. Well, yeah, be sure to reach out to Jonathan if you're a job seeker or if you're looking for internal resources. He's a good guy to know. He's very well connected in the tech space, especially in the world of SAP and Microsoft, Oracle, ERP, all that stuff. But anything tech related, career-wise, job-wise, be sure to connect with him. He's a good one to know. So look forward to having him on the show again at some point in the future. So we're going to shift gears a bit and stay on this theme here of career advice. And I want to play you this clip. This is a YouTube video from my YouTube channel where I talk about the 5 things I wish I knew before I started my consulting career. And this is going to be helpful to you if you're a aspiring consultant, or maybe you already are a consultant, or if you're someone that works with consultants or is leading any sort of change or transformation within your organization. These are also some lessons just about going through transformations that I've learned, not just about being a consultant, but helping clients through their own transformations. So it's meant to appeal to both job seekers and leaders within IT departments. So let's roll the clip and we'll come back and talk about it.
The first lesson from having been in the consulting space for 25 years is that the technology industry is relatively rigged. And what I mean by that is that it's wired to sell technology. The entire industry is built around the concept of selling as much technology as possible to end clients. And that's okay. It's a free market. It's capitalism. That's what technology companies do. What's not as well understood, however, is the fact that most consulting firms and analysts are all part of this technology sales machine. Consulting firms partner with software firms to sell as much software as possible and to provide services specific to those solutions. Industry analysts are paid by software vendors, and they're commissioned by these vendors to create analyst reports and certain types of third-party research that tout the benefits of these different technologies. So it creates somewhat of an echo chamber that surrounds end customers into believing that that message is the only message out there. Now, early in my career, the fact that this software industry is rigged really bothered me. It bothered me being part of that machine and being as biased as I was, having worked for one of those firms. But ultimately, I decided I could either be mad about it or I could try to do something that provided an alternative to our clients. And that's exactly what we did by starting Third Stage Consulting. But as a buyer and as a potential consultant, if you're interested in being a consultant in the industry, you just have to be aware that that's how the industry works. And you have to be aware that if you go work for one of the incumbent traditional technology consulting firms or an analyst firm, you're probably going to be expected to have an extreme bias that touts the company line of certain software vendors that are affiliated with those partners. So the industry is rigged, and that's one of the things I wish I would have known when I started my career, because it made me a bit jaded early on to discover it the hard way along the way. When I was in graduate school, I studied business, and I had imagined myself being a business consultant, not a technologist. In fact, when I first went to Price Waterhouse and I was told that I was going to get certified in SAP and ultimately be involved with SAP implementations, I kicked and screamed and resisted the idea because I wanted to be a business consultant. I obviously didn't win that battle because I was a junior entry-level consultant and I didn't have a lot of influence in the organization or a lot of say, so I went along with it and I learned the technology, which was actually a very good thing for me. But what I learned along the way in this combination of understanding business that I had studied and had some experience with in graduate school, and then learning and being certified in a certain technology, I learned that technology is not the answer to business problems. It's one part of an answer, but it's not the complete solution. And I think that's one of the things that is missing from our industry in general, is the fact that most technologists and technology consulting firms are focused on bells and whistles and tangible technologies that you can see and touch and feel. But what end clients are expecting is business improvement and business value and re-engineered business processes and a redesigned organization that works better than it did before the technology implementation. Technology alone won't solve that problem, but a combination of business and technology will, and that's one of the biggest lessons and takeaways I have from my career is the fact that technology alone is not the answer. It's more often than not more about the people and the operations than it is the technology itself. One of the biggest lessons I have in my career that's actually a more recent lesson here just in the last 5 or 10 years is the fact that technology is increasingly changing at a fast pace. It's exponentially improving and exponentially changing at a much faster pace than any single business or organization can. And that is creating quite a big chasm between the way businesses are today and what technology could potentially do for them. And that chasm, that divide between current state and what could be the future state, is making these projects even more risky, more complicated, more costly, et cetera. So understanding this fact and this dynamic that technology is always going to change faster than human ability to change is really important. And that's an important nuance and art of consulting, is understanding how to help clients navigate an increasingly complex and risky terrain. Early in my career as a technology consultant, I used to think that it was the software vendor's fault when there was a failure. Oftentimes I would get contacted early in my career about being an expert witness, and oftentimes in these lawsuits, the vendors were getting blamed for lack of features, lack of functionality, et cetera. Now, certainly in some cases, technology is a problem. The technology is too complicated, it doesn't work the way it should. In some cases, the consulting firm, the technology implementers are implementing the solution in a way that doesn't work, either technically and or for the business. But at the end of the day, what I found and learned is that more often than not, technology is not the problem. It's not the root cause of why projects typically fail. Typically, it's more operational and even more so organizational. What I mean by that is it's usually cultural resistance to certain technologies. It's the fact that people don't understand these new technologies, these new emerging technologies. It's that the organizations oftentimes are resistant to the new technologies. These are all things that create more problems and are more commonly the problems than technology. And you add to the fact that oftentimes these projects are not managed well. They don't have the right governance and controls in place. The system integrators come in without a complete plan or a realistic plan, and that creates a lot of problems as well. But again, that's not necessarily related to the technology. It's related to organizational, people, and operational issues. So when there's problems in these big projects, technology is sometimes part of the problem, but usually the bigger problem and the bigger root cause of failure is things related to people and operations. One of the things that was probably the hardest for me to get used to as a technology consultant is the fact that you come in as an outside consultant, you have a fresh set of eyes, you have an objective perspective. You don't always have all the answers, but you have a lot of expertise you can bring to the table. And sometimes clients listen to you and sometimes they don't. Sometimes clients don't think that your advice is relevant, or they take part of what you recommend or part of what you advise and maybe do their own thing as it relates to other things. And as a consultant, sometimes it's very difficult. It can be frustrating to look at a client and say that the path you're going down is high risk and there's a problem with it, or you should be changing your path or pivoting in this direction. And as tempting as it is to be altruistic and a purist about your recommendations, as good consultants, you have to recognize that the clients are where they are and you have to meet them where they are. Oftentimes, clients just aren't going to have the resources to do things the way that you think they should. They may not have the budget, the people, they may not have the wherewithal, they may not have the same priorities that you think they should have. And I still get frustrated by this at times, if I'm being honest, but the reality is it has to be okay. And even when a client doesn't listen to us, we still stay with them throughout the entire journey. And I've worked with consultants in my career that will say, well, if they're not going to listen to me, then I don't want to be part of this project. And to me, that is a very dangerous position to be in as a consultant, because ultimately you do have to meet the client where they are. You have to fit your recommendations within their realities of what they have to deal with day to day. And the solution has to be theirs. It can't be ours as outside consultants. So the fact that clients don't always listen can be frustrating at times, but at the end of the day, it's okay. And it's their business and they can do what they want.
So that was my YouTube video where I talk about 5 things I wish I would have known when I started my consulting career. What were some of your thoughts and takeaways from the video, Darian?
Yeah, obviously it was great to hear about those 5 different lessons that you wish you would have known or when you started your consulting career. I think a lot of people can learn from that, especially if they're looking in the job market today and they're maybe younger or anything like that. But one point I really liked that you said was that failures are usually people and operations problems, and that if you can learn this early on as a consultant, it really can help some of those soft skills or other things that we were talking about earlier on in the episode. Some follow-up questions I have for this is when it comes to like when tech is sprinting and the organization is walking, what cadence tools or guardrails actually keeps the risk for companies in check, and how can consultants approach clients to this situation?
Yeah, that might be actually it's a good idea for a future YouTube video is to dive into that question in a little bit more detail. But if I were to summarize what I might say in a YouTube video, if I were to create one about that, I would say that first of all, you have to recognize that most project planning that we gravitate towards as humans, and especially IT types of people, most of that planning is going to gravitate towards a product. We're focusing on how to design, build, and deploy a certain technology product. And that plan might be realistic. It might be perfectly realistic that it's going to take you X amount of time to do those things on the surface. But then when you dig into, well, what does it mean in terms of decision making that is going to have to happen from the business? Or, we have a milestone in here for data migration, and the software vendor is assuming that the data is already cleaned and mapped and ready to bring over. But then you hit that milestone in the plan, and then the implementing organization quickly realizes like, oh, you wanted me to do that. Well, I didn't do it yet. And so that ends up pushing everything out. So there's things like that where you have to factor in the non-product specific types of work streams and activities and milestones. And once you do those things, you quickly realize that in most cases, a project plan that you get from a software vendor or from a product technology focused project manager is going to be compressed because they're assuming that they have control over what they do, and they can probably, in most cases, they could probably do what they're saying they can do. The problem is that's not all they're responsible for. There's a lot of other dependencies to what other work streams are doing: the change management, the training, the data migration, the architecture, the integration, all the process improvements, just making decisions around how our processes are going to look. All that stuff is stuff that adds to time and budget, but companies don't think about it and they don't realize it until they get into the middle of a project. And then it becomes this big surprise, this catastrophic disruption that it shouldn't have been totally unexpected. I mean, usually when you look back on these, you can see how those overruns happen because of that. So that's why that phase 0 implementation planning is so critical, because if you can spend that extra time up front, getting the plan right, getting some of these key decisions made, making sure you have all your assumptions laid out, making sure you've addressed the other work streams and plan for the other work streams, not just the software vendor or the system integrators. Once you do all that, then you quickly realize, okay, this is a more complete program that we have to plan for. And usually that's a totally different time and budget than what your software vendor or technical system integrator is going to start with.
Yeah, absolutely. And last question, this kind of wraps up the episode into a whole here. What if like people and operations are the real battleground here? What are 3 non-technical skills that accelerate careers the most for consultants?
Well, I think in addition to AI, if you have AI and you know how to use it, and you can give examples of how you've used it to help yourself do your job better and or help your clients be more effective, that's going to be super impactful. But I think consultants, especially technical consultants that have some change management chops to them, something that's totally different from the technology side. I think those people that are technology focused, but maybe they've got some certification or experience with organizational change management, I think that's a super powerful 1-2 punch combo. So I would say if you can augment your technology depth with a little bit more breadth in other non-technical areas, that's just going to help you. Even if you stick with other technical areas, even if if you're let's just say you're a functional SAP consultant that focuses on, one specific module, the financials module within S/4HANA, let's just say that's your experience, or that's your focus, that's your sweet spot. That's great. Keep doing that, keep that depth, keep that expertise. But if you can augment it with something different, like something like architecture or project management or change management, something that just pushes you outside of just viewing the world from one little box within a bigger picture, that's going to make you stand out and make you more valuable to the companies you work with.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that encaps this whole episode as a whole today. And yeah, it was a great conversations overall. Hopefully, if you're looking for a job, you got something out of today's episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, hopefully this helps give you some things to think about as you navigate your career and as you navigate how you're going to build your IT team if you're an IT leader. And as always, feel free to reach out to me if you've got questions, or you want to brainstorm ideas, or you just want some free advice. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help. So I've included my contact information below. You can see new episodes of this show every Wednesday. You can see past episodes as well at transformationgroundcontrol.com. New episodes drop every Wednesday, so we look forward to seeing you next time. Hope you have a great week in the meantime, and we'll see you next time on the next episode of Transformation Ground Control. Take care.